Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
Welcome to Caribbean Perspective. So glad you can join us. The story that takes the lead in today's edition for Thursday, 13th March 2025, and brought to you in association with our friends at Antillean Group. UWI Vice-Chancellor Sir Hilary Beckles supports Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister's stance on U.S. policy on CARICOM countries enrolled in the Cuban medical program. Details after this important message.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all, perils big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's a service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillean Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Welcome back. Vice-Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, is supporting Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley's stance not to be intimidated into withdrawing support for Cuba's health services. More in this TTT News report.
Earlier this month, U.S. President Donald Trump and Senator Marco Rubio criticized Cuba's medical missions, labeling them as forced labor and threatening visa sanctions against countries employing Cuban doctors. Speaking at the commissioning of the Port of Spain's Central Block on Monday, Dr. Rowley defended Trinidad and Tobago's right to hire Cuban health professionals. And at the UWI's Campus Council meeting on Tuesday morning, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles touched on the issue.
So the Prime Minister of the Republic here, Dr. Rowley, making it clear that this country will not be intimidated in respect of the support given it by the Cuban health services. And we're being told that we have to pay a price if we continue to collaborate on a regional basis. I see the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, has said the same thing.
And Sir Hilary said the University of the West Indies has been leading from the front in terms of this regional unity and partnership.
Of Havana right now, when you walk into the center square of the University of Havana, you will see a building. And on that building, it says, University of the West Indies, Center for Sustainable Development. There, in Havana, in their university, we built that there, working with the government and people of Cuba. And I was honored to go over there and pull that ribbon to allow the UV.
We take another look at Caribbean leaders telling the United States keep their visa. We are sticking with Cuba. More in the St. Vincent Times YouTube channel with Ernesto Cook.
Just came back from California. And if I never there again in my life, I will ensure that the sovereignty of Trinidad and Tobago is known to its people and respected by all.
Does anybody expect that I to go because I want to keep a visa, that I would let 60 persons from the poor and working people to die? It will never happen.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's not very often that you have Caribbean leaders really standing up to the U.S. government, or some people like to say Babylon U.S. But they are getting some strength to do so now. It's a good thing. When they do good, we must say they do good, and when they do bad, we must speak about it as well. And so I noticed that Dr. Keith Rowley is basically saying if he never gets to go back to the U.S., well, too bad. And I see the St. Vincent Prime Minister also saying, look, if he is to lose his visa and his wife, well, I prefer to lose it than to allow 60 people who currently is on hemodialysis that the Cuban doctors deal with to die in St. Vincent. So it's good to see that people are standing up. What did Dr. Rowley say He said Prime Minister Keith Rowley has come out in defense of Trinidad and Tobago's sovereignty following the recent threat of U.S. visa restrictions announced by Trump administration against governments utilizing Cuba's overseas medical mission. The program is vital healthcare systems across the region for decades, has been described in the report by the Trump administration as constitution forced labor and a form of human trafficking. So let's hear what Dr. Rowley had to say.
Talking about we rely a lot for our healthcare delivery on certain specialists who over the decades we have obtained from India, from the Philippines, sometimes from Africa, and mainly from Cuba. Out of the blue now we are being called human traffickers because we hire technical people who we pay top dollar equal to local rates, but we are now being accused of taking part in the program where people are being exploited. That's somebody's interpretation. And of course, there are local people here encouraging them to take away our US visas. Today, I just came back from California. And if I never there in my life, I will ensure that the sovereignty of Trinidad and Tobago is known to its people and respected by all.
Right, so Rowley made a serious stand talking about Trinidad's sovereignty. The St. Vincent government in a bold stand for healthcare in the Caribbean. Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves expressed his willingness to sacrifice his U.S. visa to maintain the presence of Cuban doctors in his country. And he was speaking at the PNP Forum in Portland. He defended the vital role that these medical professionals play in local healthcare system, particularly the contribution to essential services like hemodialysis at the Medical Diagnostic Center in Georgetown in St. Vincent. So let's listen to Dr. Ralph Gonsalves.
The Secretary of State of the United States of America has issued a statement that countries which are complicit in his words with trafficking in persons and exploiting Cuban professionals, the doctors and engineers who come, that those who are complicit will lose their passport, they will lose their visas and their families. And if he knows the facts, I'm sure that he will understand that we are not involved in that. But if it is determined that you have to take away my visa and Eloise's visa, I want to say this publicly. It could be reported. I'm not looking for fight with anybody, but we have to be honest and open. The hemodialysis which we do in St. Vincent at the Modern Medical and Diagnostic Center with these 60 persons, without the Cubans there, I will not be able to offer that service. So, does anybody expect that to go because I want to keep a visa, that I would let 60 persons from the poor and working people to die? It will never happen.
Well, there you go. So you see Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves of St. Vincent standing up for what he believes. And Gonsalves' declaration, of course, comes in response to the recent announcement by the U.S. government. Of course, they're now aiming to restrict visas. But, I understand some people are saying, look, these Caribbean leaders could talk these things on stage. They could say them for the show. They're not going to lose it because they have diplomatic, pass through and they go to the U.S. What about the local people if the governments decide to stand up against the United States of America? We will see how this plays out, but that's a good thing to see. That Caribbean leaders are finally taking a stand on something and not being afraid to talk back to the United States of America.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
In association with our friends at
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Of course, the United States Department recently announced the expansion of Cuba-related visa restrictions applying to all those involved in the Cuban overseas medical missions. The move, which affects a major source of revenue for the island, was rejected by local authorities as the seventh anti-Cuba measure by the Trump administration since January 20th. CGTN's Luis Cherino reports from Havana.
In announcing the latest visa restrictions, U.S. State Secretary Marco Rubio said that the Cuban government profits from forced labor, exporting workers, including doctors, to the detriment of the Cuban people. Cuban authorities rejected the accusations, calling the decision groundless. Since 1963, more than 600,000 health workers have been part of Cuban medical brigades that have assisted patients in 165 countries. Their missions have included emergency assistance to treat Ebola in Africa, cholera in Haiti, other diseases across Latin America, and more recently COVID-19 patients in countries like Italy. In a recent television appearance, Cuban doctors who have participated in overseas missions rejected the U.S. allegations, insisting that their humanitarian service is done out of compassion for sick people who need their help.
Ninguno hemos sido esclavos.
None of the Cuban health workers have been a slave. We go abroad on our own willingness and have all guarantees for our families back home. We doctors go to assist people with humanism and give them not what we have left, but part of all we have.
Cuban health professionals told CCHT about their commitment to help other nations, such as ophthalmologist Agustin Perez, who has participated in several overseas missions.
It's a tradition in Cuban medicine, all this about internationalist services. We are all very willing to offer other nations our medical support and assistance.
Dr. Margarita Salabarria is a gynecologist at the Havana Maternity Hospital. She also has joined several medical missions in Latin America.
I went to the medical mission in Bolivia on my own decision. No one forced me to go. It was my personal and professional desire to go there. While I was there, my family in Cuba received my full salary, and I kept my job position here upon my return.
Dr. Michelle Cabrera, director of the Central Medical Collaboration Unit, which dispatches the medical brigades, says Cuba's medical missions abroad are free of charge for poor countries. He says the revenues from contracts with other countries help maintain and improve the Cuban public health system. Cuban authorities said that over 22,000 Cuban health professionals assigned to 54 medical brigades are currently assisting people in need in several countries around the world. The new U.S. restrictions will not only affect the Cuban health system, but will undermine health care for untold numbers of people around the world. Luis Chirino, CGTN, Havana.
In other news, St. Kitts and Nevis' Minister of Foreign Affairs and Commerce, Dr. Denzel Douglas, said the recent tariffs imposed by the U.S. on some international partners, namely Canada and Mexico, will have negative impacts on the price of goods and services in St. Kitts and Nevis. The senior government minister was asked about his views on the tariffs during the latest Prime Minister's press conference on Thursday, March 6, 2025, held at NEMA Building. Andre Huey of SKN Newsline was there and filed this report.
What it means, therefore, is that it is expected for us to pay higher prices for the goods that would have been imported through any port or from ports of origin where increased tariffs would have been placed by the announcements made by the President Trump, within 100 days of taking office for a second time in the history of the United States. Not only will this impact us because of the increase in tariffs, but we have already been impacted because of COVID, where it takes much longer for goods to arrive to our ports, much longer because there has been disruption in the supply trade routes as a result of shortages from COVID. And now we are going to experience, I would think, maybe longer periods for goods to arrive, the cost of these goods would go up. And then, of course, it will impact negatively on the cost of living for our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Dr. Douglas also said they are waiting to see what impact the tariffs would have on St. Kitts and Nevis exports to the United States.
Of course, we still have the electronic assembling parts. There's a few of the companies that are manufacturing goods that go into the U.S. market. And we are still waiting to see how those tariffs will impact positively or negatively on the cost of goods, depending on what side of the equation you're sitting.
The trade war tensions have rattled markets and raised fears of economic turbulence. I'm Andre Huey for SKN Newsline.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean.
In the meantime, please follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily regional news and more, in association with our friends at Antillian Group.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.